I'm sensing a shift in the market and more shoes like this. By the way, this is the Brooks Hyperion. This is Brooks' lightest training shoe that they offer. And it's pretty quick. Pretty quick. Let's talk about it. Let's get these disclosures out of the way. Guys, Brooks and Road Rider Sports were good enough to send me this shoe for the purpose of review. However, they are not going to get to see this video before you do here on YouTube. And with that, the Brooks Hyperion is a pretty phenomenal deal. It's only $140. Now look, I know, $140. It's still a bit of money, but the prices seem to be creeping up. And we've gotten to a point where I think $140 is a really good price. Anyway, $140, I'll put a link in the show notes below. Now, I already said that this is Brooks' lightest training shoe in their entire lineup. And Brooks claims that a US men's size 9 will tip the scale at 7.6 ounces or 215.5 grams. However, in my size, a US men's size 13, it tips the scale at 9.1 ounces or 259 grams. My friends, a size 13 that weighs 259 grams is absolutely phenomenal. Like, we're getting very close to race shoe type of weight. And as you would expect, it feels really light on my foot, but we'll talk about the ride in just a second. Now, the Brooks Hyperion does have an 8mm drop. Now, Brooks doesn't publish their stack heights, but they have reported that we have 22 in the heel, 14 in the forefoot for an 8mm drop. The only thing we know for sure is that it's an 8mm drop. And that reported 22, 14 clearly does not include the outsole rubber or the insole. By the way, the insole is removable. And if I hold it up, you can see, I mean, it's not that thick, but it's thick enough. So I think that 2214 is just like the raw midsole foam. And when you add everything else to it, the insole, the outsole rubber, I'm expecting it to be about 31 in the heel, 23 in the forefoot. That's kind of what it looks like, kind of what it feels like. Give or take a few millimeters, that's what I'd say it is, which probably not coincidentally is the same stack height as the original Hyperion Tempo. By the way, in case you didn't know, the Hyperion is the second version of the Hyperion Tempo. Brooks just decided to drop the tempo from the name. Anyway, it's light. We have a pretty minimal stack. I mean, again, if we compare it with a lot of other shoes out on the market, let's just say 31, 23. If it is 31 and 23, it's a pretty minimal stack. And because of that relatively low stack height and the lightweight, it's going to be no surprising that the Brooks Hyperion is made for speed days. In fact, if you start looking at this shoe, that's probably what you're going to have in mind for what you would use it for. But let's talk about the materials. Let's start at the top. Let's work our way down. Then I'll tell you about my experience running in it. This heel collar is actually pretty thin. I think it's one of these times when I look at the heel collar and I think there's more to it than there really is. When I look closely, it's really quite thin. So they're not using a lot of material, which makes sense. It's their lightest shoe. They're going to want to use as little material as possible, yet still keep it comfortable because it's a training shoe. The heel counter is very rigid. Didn't have any issues with heel slip. We got a nice Achilles flare just to keep that pressure off your Achilles tendon when you're wearing the shoe. The upper is another area where I think looks can be deceiving. Like if I looked at this from the top, to me, it doesn't look very breathable, and yet it really is. When I look on the inside, I can see the light pouring into the shoe. And this upper is actually Brooks' new warp knit and mesh material. And that's a bit of a funny combo. When I think of knit, I think like, you know, like a woolly jumper. I think that shoes that are knit usually soak up a lot of sweat. They really become a sponge, and for that reason, I haven't been a fan of knit shoes in the past. However, this is not that kind of knit. It's very much more on the mesh end of knit, if that makes sense. Probably why Brooks markets it as a knit and mesh upper. Oh, I can't forget warp. It is a warp knit and mesh upper. And I've been very impressed with this. Now, keep in mind that I do live in Florida, and it is summertime when I'm reviewing this shoe. So every run that I have gone out on, it has been a total sweat fest. I have not used this shoe when I haven't soaked it in sweat. And sometimes when I'm wearing a daily trainer, let's just use a daily trainer as an example, sometimes when I soak those shoes, the upper can get a little loose around the foot. I didn't find that with the Hyperion. On all my runs, now to be honest, I did use this mostly for my speed work days, but I did go out for a half marathon easy run, and on all my runs, the lockdown across the midfoot, across the forefoot, I didn't get any give when they got really wet. Now speaking of the forefoot, there is a lot of room here. Now we don't have ultra level room, it isn't a foot-shaped toe box, but I had zero pressure on my little toe, which is usually where I feel it when shoes get a little narrow. So all in all, I found it very comfortable. The tongue is super thin. It's almost like a race day level of thinness, until you get to right about here, right in the middle, and then there's a little bit of padding, which just helps protect the laces from biting into the top of your foot. I didn't experience any lace bite, so I assume that little bit of padding is working. We do have a lace loop right on the front, and the tongue is gusseted on the medial side, which I'm really glad about. I don't know if you remember, but I recently reviewed, it wasn't that recent, it's probably 4 or 5 months ago, I did review the Hyperion Max. And one of my critiques of the Hyperion Max was that it didn't have a gusseted tongue, and I did notice a little tongue migration on this shoe. Not so with the Brooks Hyperion. Seems like by just adding that gusset on the single side, they eliminated any tongue migration. So if you also had that problem with the Hyperion Max, you will not have that problem with the Hyperion. The laces are absolutely fine. I really didn't have any trouble, except when I'm tightening them. And this really isn't a complaint, but I did have to pay a little more attention when I was tightening them. So I gotta be honest, I'm very lazy when I put on my shoes. Mostly I will put my foot in, I will just pull the laces tight, tie them in a double knot, and then I'm off out the door. With the Brooks Hyperion, I did find that I had to pull the laces further down in order to get them tight enough, and then kind of work my way up before I pulled the lace ends to tie them in a bow. Now, and look, I know, some of you are gonna say, Matt, I do that every time. That's how normal people tie their laces. But I find, as I said, because of laziness, usually I'll just pull them tight from the ends, and that kind of tightens it enough going all the way down the entirety of the laces. But for some reason, the laces weren't moving through the eyelets easy enough for me to do that. I don't know. I feel like I've been talking about this non-issue for way too long already. Let's move on. The Hyperion does have very minimal overlays. Got some branding on the lateral side, on the medial side, of course along the eyelet chain, just to protect those laces. You don't want to rip the upper. And then we got this underlay coming right around the toe box just to give you a little extra protection, keep that upper off your feet when you're running. Guys, that's it. When it comes to minimal overlays, the Brooks Hyperion really is the winner. Let's talk about midsole. Brooks is using their DNA Flash. Now the DNA Flash is in all their super fast racing and training shoes. It's a nitrogen infused foam and it's pretty fun. Now the DNA Flash is a little on the firmer side, but listen, remember, this is a speed day shoe. You do want it to be a little firmer. When a shoe is a little firmer, you get that road feel and you get a little more feedback from your running. You don't want all that energy to get sucked into the foam. I've really got no complaints about the DNA Flash and the midsole in general. Of course, I have been running a lot in the Hyperion Max before the Hyperion, so I knew what it felt like. And to me, the Hyperion actually feels just slightly firmer than the Hyperion Max, which actually makes sense because it's probably a product of the slightly lower stack height in the Hyperion. And although the Hyperion Max is made for running fast, the Hyperion is made for running faster. Coming down to the outsole, we have a lot of coverage here on the front. I mean, that's a lot of rubber. And I'm surprised that Brooks was able to put this much rubber on the sole of this shoe, just because clearly they were very focused on saving weight. And it's a light shoe. Could have been lighter if they used less rubber, but then it wouldn't have been as resilient. My friends, looking at this rubber, and at the making of this video, I've run about 45 miles in this shoe. I really can't see any wear. Let me look on the heel, because the lateral heel is where I usually get the most wear. No, it is actually quite amazing how little wear I have on the bottom of this shoe, which is a good thing for you. It's a good thing for you if you are thinking about buying this shoe because it's going to last. I should say it's going to last if you want it to last. At $140, you might be thinking, Matt, it doesn't matter if it really lasts because it'll last long enough and then I'll get another pair of shoes. And that's funny, but some of you are going to be thinking that. We've also got this big area of exposed DNA Flash midsole, and that is probably where Brooks is saving a lot of weight. Now, on a training shoe, they are going to cover the whole outsole in rubber. Let's just compare it to the Ghost 15. You can see there's significantly more rubber on the Ghost, and the rubber is even thicker than on the Hyperion. But don't look too closely at that because this is a daily trainer. That's for easy runs, even recovery runs, and the Hyperion is for speed days. But guys, now that I've just said that the Hyperion is for speed days, I want you to know that if you favor a firmer ride, this shoe definitely has enough protection for you to take this out on most of your runs. Now, for me personally, I probably wouldn't grab for this shoe if I'm going out for a 20-mile long run, but the shoe does feel really good underfoot, even at easier paces. When I get back from my runs, I never feel like I'm beating up because I'm feeling so much of the road. It's definitely firm, but it is protective. Now, with that said, I'm not sure I would recommend this as a daily trainer. I know I have said that about the Hyperion Max, and that still stands. If you wanted to use the Hyperion Max for a slightly expensive daily trainer that is better suited for picking up the pace, I still recommend it. For the Brooks Hyperion, I think this is going to be better for people who obviously they want to do their speed work, they want to run fast, and this is going to be an excellent option for a non-plated race day shoe. But if you don't have a lot of shoes in your lineup and you're looking for your shoes to do a little bit of everything, the Brooks Hyperion can fit that bill. Now, I know I'm going around in circles, and I have said that you can use it for the easy runs and it's very comfortable, but the shoe really wakes up when you pick up the pace. And that is obviously a product of the weight and the firmer midsole. Now, I've used this shoe for my 400s, I've done 800s, I've done tempo runs. And what I remember from running my intervals is that when I start the interval again, obviously when I start an interval, I'm always kind of like, kind of dreading it. But once I get going, the shoe just disappears on my foot. And the shoe isn't something I have to worry about at all, which is exactly what I'm looking for when I'm trying to run fast. Oh, by the way, Brooks also says that this outsole rubber, it is strategically placed to conserve weight and to promote fast transitions. Now that seems a lot of marketing hype, but on the other hand, this shoe does have fast transitions. It does feel good, and the turnover is really quick. So while it sounds like marketing hype, perhaps it isn't. I don't know, I'd love to hear your thoughts if you have run in the Brooks Hyperion. But one thing's for sure, for a shoe of this quality for $140, it is extremely good value. If you do like this type of content, it'd be great if you subscribe to the channel. And of course, if you like this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. The best way to show me that you've watched and you like what you see. And with that, my name is Matt B. This has been my review of Brooks Hyperion. Be kind, be happy, run well. I'll see you in a couple of days.